You're live.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of Monmouthshire County Council's Cabinet. I'm Richard John, Leader of the Council. We'll have introductions in a moment. This is going to be a fully remote meeting of our Cabinet today due to the Omicron variant. We hope that meetings in the not too distant future will be will be done on a hybrid basis, and some of us will be able to get back into face-to-face meetings. This has been a very difficult week for us here in Monmouthshire County Council. Last week we had the very sad loss of our friend and colleague Councillor Peter Clark. He was well respected right across the council chamber. He was one of our most long-standing county councillors, represented the Llangibby area since 1989, and in our full council a week tomorrow we'll have a minute's silence for Peter, and we will be able to share some tributes and memories to reflect on the very sad loss that we've had this week. We'll start with apologies for absence. What apologies have we had, please, Wendy? And then we'll go to introductions.
Hi, Leader, it's Nicola.
Oh, Nicola, sorry.
I haven't heard, well, I've heard apologies from County Councillor Joanne Watkins, and I know County Councillor Tudor Thomas is here today rather than Dimitri Petruni. Thank
you very much. I've had apologies for Bob Greenland, and Councillor Lisa Dimmock will be joining us in a few minutes. So if I can ask Cabinet colleagues to introduce themselves, and can we start please with Sarah?
Hello all, County Councillor Sarah Jones, Cabinet Member for the Economy and Joint Deputy Leader.
Thank you. And Jane?
Jane Pratt, Cabinet Member for Infrastructure and Neighbourhood Services.
Thank you. Phil?
Councillor Phil Murphy, Cabinet Responsibility for Resources.
Thank you. Paul?
Good afternoon, everyone. County Councillor Paul Pavia, Cabinet Member for Education.
Thank you. And Penny?
Hello, I'm Penny Jones and I'm Cabinet Member for Social Services, Safeguarding and Health.
Thank you very much. Now, in terms of opposition leaders, as Nicola mentioned, we've had apologies from Councillor Joe Watkins, the leader of the Liberal Democrats. But I understand Councillor Tudor Thomas is going to be standing in for Councillor Dimitri Petruni. Do you want to introduce yourself, Tudor?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Chair. Tudor Thomas, I'm Chair of the Labour Group at County Hall and Chair of CYP, and standing in today for Dimitri Petruni, the leader, because he's got work commitments. So look forward to joining you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. You're very welcome, and I know Councillor Petruni hasn't been able to attend any Cabinet meetings the last 6 months, and sometimes hasn't been able to send apologies either. But you're very welcome, and I know you're going to be asking some questions during the meeting, so we really welcome your engagement as well. So thank you very much.
Thanks. Can I just say that Councillor Petruni, you know, his grandmother became seriously ill over Christmas and subsequently died. So he's been quite a bit of pressure on personally for him, and I think that's the main reason.
Right. Well, I'm very sorry to hear that. I'm sure we'll all wish to send our condolences to Councillor Petruni on that very sad loss. Thank you. Councillor Simon Howard, do you want to come in?
Yes, good afternoon, Leader, and good afternoon, Cabinet. Leader of the Independent Group, Monmouthshire County Council.
Thank you very much. Warm welcome to you, Simon. Any declarations of interest anyone wishes to declare? Okay, well, if people could make a declaration as and when. Officers, a warm welcome to you as well, and if you could introduce yourselves when you contribute to the meeting, that would be very helpful. Councillor Lisa Dimmock, do you want to introduce yourself as well, please?
Yes.
Sorry, Chair. Yes, County Councillor Lisa Dimmock and Cabinet Member for Community Wellbeing and Social Justice.
Thank you very much. We've got quite a few reports to get through this afternoon, so we'll start with the first one, which is the draft revenue budget proposals for next year, 22-23, and presenting that for us today is Councillor Phil Murphy, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And the purpose of this report is to set out the draft revenue budget proposals for the financial year 2022-23 and to commence a period of consultation on the draft budget proposals for a 4-week period ending on the 16th of February 2022. The other item on here is to consider the 22-23 draft budget proposals within the context of the 4-year medium-term financial plan and the corporate plan. Amongst the recommendations are that the consultation period, including the opportunity to present alternative proposals that have been assessed for future generations and equality implications, commences for that 4-week period that I mentioned to end on the 16th of February 22. So just to underline that, if anybody has any thoughts on an alternative proposal that they want us to consider, if we have it up to the 16th of February, we will be able to do that. Anybody who suggests anything after that date, it'll be impossible to do the necessary compliance, and therefore that opportunity of influence in the budget will be lost. So within the recommendations, as I say, is to update Cabinet on the implications arising out of the provisional settlement announced by Welsh Government, and to agree its proposed response as outlined in the letter shown in Appendix 5 to the report. And that Cabinet recognises unavoidable service pressures of some 10.41 million and further pay pressures of 4.96 million that need to be provided for within the 22-23 budget. Cabinet confirms its intention to fund pay-related pressures insofar that they impact schools, and up to a threshold of a 3% pay award, to accommodate significant demand pressures caused in particular by increasing numbers of looked after children and pupils with additional learning needs. So Cabinet proposes a council tax rise of 3.95% for modelling purposes. This is all subject to consultation responses for that financial year to 22-23 and over the medium term. Cabinet acknowledges the financial risks and uncertainties that remain, and that, unless mitigated through other means, will result in further budget pressures needing to be managed. Cabinet recognises that whilst the draft budget proposals are presenting a balanced budget, this includes a one-off contribution of 863,000 from the Council's limited general reserve, the Council Fund. Efforts are to continue to mitigate as much as possible the level of reserve contributions supporting the budget proposals, and that work continues at a pace to try and avoid having to take that 863,000 or as much as possible out of the Council's limited reserves. The last 2 years have been truly unprecedented. The severe flooding that impacted the county in early 2020 was soon followed by the pandemic. The virus is still with us, and its impacts will continue through the current financial year and beyond. Monmouthshire, in keeping with all other councils in Wales, has had to accommodate significant service pressures into its cost base to ensure that the service offer has remained relevant and appropriate for the citizens of the county. And for some years now, the council has successfully accommodated the ongoing and significant financial, demographic and demand-led pressures. So these budget proposals and the revenue budget as a whole for 22-23 continue to support the priorities of the administration. Notably, this includes ensuring that resources are aligned to meet the plans for tackling the longer-term challenges that communities and the public sector organisations are facing as the transition towards net zero, health inequalities, social care reform, well-being of children and young people, and mental health. In supporting these longer-term strategic aim of the Council, the draft budget proposals will also specifically seek to recognise that pay and pension related spending pressure in the schooling system that I mentioned up to the threshold of a 3% pay award, increasing demand on schools and the local education authority of pupils with additional learning needs, the increasing complexity of cases being placed on our children's social services in respect of looked after children and for whom the Council acts as corporate parent, the growing impact of an ageing population on adult social services and the challenges that result from a fragile and unsustainable social care market in Wales, responding to the needs of the homelessness with housing related support, and sustaining locally accessible services in the most effective and efficient way possible. Despite the impact and consequences of the pandemic, the budget proposals see a continuation of our preparedness to challenge all services to sustain themselves rather than to see closure of services that matter to citizens. Despite the above average provisional settlement from Welsh Government, this does not allow the full extent of the pressures accommodated into the budget proposals to be offset. The budget proposals also highlight a number of potentially significant financial risks and uncertainties that are not factored into the budget pressures, and that if they materialise, and unless mitigated through further budget savings, will result in the need for further one-off reserve funding to be considered. These risks are around specific Welsh Government grant funding being received to meet ongoing pressures in homelessness, income shortfalls that might arise if footfall and membership of the leisure centres is not returning to pre-pandemic level, and further cost pressures that might result from the fragility of the social care market. The Council is grateful to the Welsh Government for the significant level of funding it has provided through its COVID hardship fund to meet additional costs and income losses that have resulted from the pandemic. However, with the COVID hardship fund ceasing on the 31st of March this year and significant impacts continuing to be felt into 22-23, the Council calls for Welsh Government to continue its financial support in meeting such one-off costs and impacts through 22-23. The pandemic aside, the challenges facing the authority now and into the future should not be underestimated. The latest 21-22 in-year forecast exhibits significant pressures within and across services. A recovery plan is in place and is looking to arrest the current non-COVID overspend on services, such as this does not result in any unnecessary call on limited one-off reserves and any impact flowing through to the current year, well, to 22-23. So, as I said, Leader, this is now going out for consultation. There's a full diary of scrutiny committee meetings and all of the external bodies that we normally see, and that starts tomorrow with the school's budget forum. So I'll stop there. This is a very, very long report, and clearly will be given full consideration in the scrutiny meetings. Thank you, Leader.
Phil, thank you. That's a really comprehensive overview. Pete Davis, you're the author of the report. Do you want to add anything to what Phil said?
I think on this occasion, Leader, I've got very, very little to add. I think Phil has comprehensively been through the report. He's captured all the salient points, and very happy to respond to any specific questions that Councillor Murphy might not be able to answer himself, which I very much doubt. Thank you.
Brill, thank you very much. Well, the raise hand function is in the chat bar if colleagues want to come in. I have to say, Phil, I do share your sense of frustration with the Welsh Government settlement again, that the gap between the lowest and highest funded councils in Wales has widened yet again this year, and it just feels really, really unfair that our residents have so much less funding per head. I mean, if we were funded to the level of just the average council in Wales, we'd have an extra £40 million to spend every year on the services we provide. So it really does feel like that gap has just got too wide. You know, I know there was speculation that perhaps it wouldn't widen this year, given that Monmouthshire received the greatest increase, but because of for so many years we've received the lowest per head settlement. It just means that gap is still getting wider and wider, a source of real frustration. And of course, in a large rural county like ours, we can't centralise services in the way that some of the geographically smaller local authorities have done. So just a source of real frustration, isn't it?
Well, it is, and where there's a danger, I think, is that because we have had such a relatively generous settlement this year, as you say, we're top of the tree instead of bottom in terms of this year's allocation, but clearly that doesn't erode. Well, in fact, as you pointed out, it doesn't do anything to help us with regards to being very firmly at the bottom, holding every other council in Wales up. And as I say, that perception that because we've had a good settlement, that's going to wipe out all the ills of the council is absolutely not the case. As I alluded to in my summing up of the report, we have substantial problems that we still have to manage. And you know, fortunately, we did get that additional cash, but that only solved part of the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, fab. Well, thank you very much for that report. I can't see any raised hands, so should we go to the recommendations then? There are quite a lot of them, and as you've given quite a comprehensive overview, I'm not minded to read them all out if that's okay, Phil. But
yeah, I caught all of the substantial ones. I would, as this is going out for consultation, I would recommend we take it en bloc.
Fab. Okay, so we shall do that then, and we really look forward to as many residents as possible taking up the opportunity to tell us what they think of this budget and if there's any way in which we can improve it. So please do take the opportunity to engage with those sessions that we've got over the next few weeks. And can I ask Cabinet members now that we vote on the recommendation to approve these papers, please? So this is the draft revenue budget proposals for next year. Can I ask everyone to vote now, please? Okay, that's unanimous in favour. Thank you all very much. So we'll move on to the next report then, which is the draft capital budget proposals for the next 3 years. And it's back to you, please, Phil. Okay, so yeah, this report sets out those draft capital budget proposals for 22-23 and the indicative capital budgets for the 3 years up to 25-26. And again, this is for a period of consultation for that 4-week period that I mentioned in the last report, ending on the 16th of February. And it's all set out in Appendix 5. There's been a reduction in the core general capital grant of 762,000, which was highlighted in the provisional settlement received from Welsh Government, and creates a funding shortfall, and we will require an assessment of the affordability of the existing programme prior to final capital proposals being presented. The capital bids put forward are in Appendix 1, and that would require additional funding over and above that contained in the existing programme. So we request that further scrutiny is carried out of these bids prior to them being considered for inclusion in the final budget proposals. So Cabinet confirms the draft capital budget proposals for 2022-23 and looks to maintain focus on the longer term challenges facing communities. My mouse is playing up. It would do, wouldn't it?
So Cabinet reaffirms the principle that new capital schemes can only be added to the capital programme if the business case demonstrates that either they are self-financing, the scheme is deemed a higher priority, utilising the priority matrix in the capital strategy than current schemes in the capital programme and therefore displaces them, and they do not compromise the core principles of affordability, sustainability or prudence. Within the report, apart from the items of a capital nature, is specifically 2.65 million of capital receipts, which we proposed to use Welsh Government guidance on with regard to flexible use of those capital receipts to fund revenue costs associated with service reform and to support the draft revenue budget proposals for 22-23. So again, Leader, an awful lot of detail in this report, and it will go out for the consultation along with the revenue report.
Fab, thank you very much. Well, the raise hand function is in the chat bar. I don't know if Jonathan Davis, if you want to add anything to what Phil has said.
Yes, thanks, Leader. I think Councillor Murphy's covered it quite thoroughly, but I think overall, just to highlight, the reduction in core grant is disappointing. And I think the further uncertainty around the specific grants at the moment, and especially in the areas of highways and transport, that's going to cause us quite a few headaches in terms of getting to a final position on this, and bringing those final budget proposals forward. I think as an authority, we haven't got recourse to large capital reserves like some others. We rely on our capital grants to work hard for us, especially in those areas around highways and transport. We've got a good record of getting some significant grants in around those areas. So, we've still got the same pressures as a rural authority as those other Welsh counterparts. We've still got those lengths of highways to maintain. So, the pressures are still remaining for us. So, we've got a fair bit of work, I would say, to do now between these draft proposals through the scrutiny process and getting through to a final position. So we need to take that assessment of affordability in terms of that gap that is there at the moment and those further pressures that have been highlighted by officers. But I think that pretty much covers it, Leader. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I bring Jane Pratt in, please?
Thank you very much, Leader, and can I thank Councillor Murphy and officers for this excellent budget pack. And I just wanted to make some comments regarding my portfolio. And whilst I welcome the 500,000 capital investment for the next 4 years to enable a number of small highway refurbishment schemes to be prioritised, there still remains, as is explained in the pack, a concerning backlog of capital works. And I implore Welsh Government to properly fund local authorities throughout Wales, as the infrastructure of our roads and bridges has become neglected. In the pack, it explains that £2.25 million is required each year for the next 3 years, and this is in addition to any specific grant funding from Welsh Government. We need this investment to reduce the backlog and improve the overall condition of our highway network. Schemes requiring urgent attention, such as the Chain Bridge and Gilwan Viaduct, need to be addressed within the next 2 years. I'm also concerned that to date we have received no assurances from Welsh Government at this late stage that the highways refurbishment grant that we've received in recent years will continue. And this will affect our ability to progress our evidence-based highways programme, which will be limited unless we continue to receive this grant from Welsh Government. The road network in Monmouthshire and throughout Wales needs a large injection of funds from Welsh Government, and whilst they have made a commitment not to build any new roads, that should not mean that we go on ignoring the vital repairs and refurbishment that is needed to keep our existing Welsh roads safe. It is quite incredible how our staff managed to make our resources stretched by our tight control on our operations, cutting out waste. For example, we were the first authority in Wales to have a machine that recycles tarmac. But the neglect of our highways by Welsh Government can no longer be ignored by them. Thank you, Leader.
Thanks, Jane. I think that's a really valuable contribution. And, when Welsh Government announced that effective moratorium on road building, we did understand that the quid pro quo was that perhaps there might be more money to spend on road maintenance because, potholes are far more dangerous to cyclists and pedestrians than they are to motorists. So I think that's a point really well made, that we do need funding to maintain our road network. Phil, was there anything you wanted to come back on that?
No, I don't think so, Leader. John summed up the bits about highways and whatever. As I say, this is going out to full scrutiny now, so there's plenty of opportunity for people to consider the report.
Fab, thank you very much. Well, again, I won't read all the recommendations because there is a whole A4 page of them, but Phil has covered them quite thoroughly in his contribution. So we'll vote on these on blocks. So these are the draft capital budget proposals for the next 3 years. And can I ask Cabinet colleagues to vote now, please? Okay, that's unanimous in favour. Thank you all very much. The next report is the Usk and Woodside Improvement Master Plan, and presenting this report for us today is Councillor Sarah Jones.
Thanks, Leader. Yes, what we've got today is the Usk and Woodside Improvement Master Plan, as you mentioned, for Cabinet's approval. The recommendations include the approval of an action plan, so it's not just the master plan, it's actually the actions that will come with it as well, and include a new steering group to oversee the development and to be able to make amendments, including the governance arrangements for overseeing the development of the master plan and its actions. That'll be with myself and Francis as lead officer. There's also an additional recommendation in here, Leader, as well. It's around enabling early occupation of the household waste recycling centre site in Usk. That decision can be made by the Deputy Chief Executive in consultation with the Cabinet member, and it's one just to note because that came in after the E&D Select Committee took this report to them, I think back in early December. Now, I know many of us will remember receiving a presentation on the master plan a few years ago by Roger following Arup's study and the work that they did on the plan itself. Now, we didn't adopt that plan at the time, despite it being completed, because we obviously entered the pandemic period and our resources were understandably diverted because of COVID. And similarly, there's also been a lot of change since then in terms of what our high streets look like, the impact of businesses, changing consumer behaviour, for example. So clearly there's going to be change that's going to need to reflect as we move forward with this plan and we actually implement it and put it in place. However, it's important that we now look and do move forward with the plan, and we do put this structure in there. It's been adopted by both Usk Town Council and also by Lambaddock Community Council, so it has their endorsement and support. And it's really important that we have this strategy, we have this strategic approach to town centre regeneration in Usk, rather than taking a piecemeal approach. It needs to have the oversight of a strategic plan, and that's what this master plan is. It's a really positive piece of work, which will hopefully give some great founding to town centre regeneration in the years to come. The master plan itself talks about various objectives for the strategy, as well as the sort of key areas where we need to see change happen to enable us to have a thriving and sustainable high street and community going forward. As I mentioned, there's a slight change as well to the original recommendation from Arup. So initially we were looking at a proposed partnership group, and it details that in the report. We don't think that partnership group would necessarily be the right approach in the current climate. So what we're proposing is a slight change to that. It's going to be a steering group, a much more focused steering group comprising of Monmouthshire County Council, Usk Town Council and Lambaddock Community Council. So they'll oversee the developments and the action plan itself. Now, by adopting this today, we can move to implementation. I think that's what we all want to see. We want to see this across all our town centres, to see sort of activity that's happening. And I think this is a great start for us. We're going to see this activity on the ground, and this is going to help steer us in the direction we want to take. I mentioned before this additional recommendation, and if you go to the report under 7.2, that's covered in there, and that's to enable us to look at options, whether or not it's going to be viable for us Town Council, who have put a proposal forward to have a temporary arrangement whereby they might be able to run a market at the Household Waste Recycling Centre, and that's something I think we could support, particularly on a temporary basis at the very least. So that's an additional recommendation for you in Cabinet. This did go to Economy and Development Select Committee. I mentioned that. That was early December, and I was at that meeting. It was very positive. We had really good feedback from members in that meeting, so that was really good. And we've also had some comments more further afield around disability and equality needs, so how that needs to maybe be bolstered within this master plan, and that certainly can happen. This is an iterative process to some extent. The master plan is the first start in getting some movement going, and we'll clearly be able to reflect in other areas like disability and equality needs, making sure our high street and town centres are as accessible as possible going forward. I'm really excited for Usk. I might have a bit of a bias towards Usk, given that it's a town very close to where I live, and I know that it's got some fantastic assets, a great community, and it really does have a lot going for it, and it just needs this direction now to really take it to the next step. And it's great to have the support of the Town Council and, as I say, Lambaddock Community Council. I think this is an exciting time for Usk, and I hope that we can adopt this plan today and we can continue to work forward on it. And just want to say thank you to Jane and Roger, who put in a lot of work behind the scenes on this, and have really helped to present the paper as it is today in a really strong format, and something we can look forward to for our residents in Usk.
Brill, thank you. That's a really positive report, and I think it's fantastic that we're not just managing the challenges that COVID, that changing high streets are throwing at us, but actually being ambitious and constructive and trying to work out how we can take advantage of opportunities and take our town centres to the next level and encourage those existing businesses to thrive and attract new ones as well. So this is a really positive development. I'll invite Cabinet members in to contribute in a moment, but Jane Lee, you're the author of the report. Was there anything you'd like to add, please? Hi, Jane.
Yes. Hi, thanks, Leader. Not a great deal. Councillor Jones has covered it very well. Really, just to looking forward, if Cabinet decide to adopt this today, I think it's it's really timely that we can set that steering group up. We can revisit the action plan, because a lot has changed in this world since 2019, when it was originally pulled together in its final draft. And it's timely we can start to look at some of those quick wins that we can bring forward into any potential funding pot from Welsh Government transforming towns in 22-23. So I think, yeah, it'd be great if we can get moving on this as soon as possible. We've got willing partners in Usk Town Council and Lambaddock Community Council, so we've the scene has been set. So we're just looking forward to being a little bit more active in Usk.
Fantastic, thank you. Penny Jones, do you want to come in?
Yeah, yes, thank you. I really welcome this report. It's got some excellent ideas, and it's something that Usk needs and needs quite quickly, I think, to go forward positively. My one question is, realistically, can these things all be achieved? Yes, I can see quite a lot, but for instance, the active travel bridge across the Usk, an excellent idea, because we all know that, you're taking your life in your hands if you cycle over the bridge or even walk with a dog. So who would fund this, and how would it be funded? So a big project as that.
Sarah, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right, Penny. There's some really big vision pieces in here which are going to require quite substantial investment. It's going to draw in lots of different areas of support. So I mean, you mentioned active travel then, so obviously I'm sure Lisa will, you know, have some comments around that, and in terms of the sort of work that she could engage her team in on that. But I think the challenge we've got is to try and have a strategy, a vision to start with. We need to be able to pull this all together so it's not piecemeal applying for different bits of funding. It's making sure that we're always drawing back to a vision, to a strategy, almost like having a shopping list of key ideas that we want to be able to apply for funding for when it becomes available. Now, Jane mentioned then the Transforming Towns funding. Now, that's been hugely beneficial to our local communities. I've just been in a meeting with the Business Resilience Forum, and the business leaders in that meeting were talking about the benefits that we've brought about in their local communities by accessing that funds. So Jane and Dan have done a fantastic job in that in various areas. And that's the sort of pot of money that we might be able to see some immediate improvements in us. Some of those bigger activity, like the active travel type of issues and objectives, then clearly that's going to need a much bigger piece of work behind it, and it'll come across various portfolios and various pots of money. But yeah, there's some big challenges, but I think having the vision there and setting it today is the first step in the right direction for this.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely. The vision has to come first, doesn't it? And you know what we don't want is perhaps some announcement of grants available, and then we find ourselves scratching around trying to find projects that fit the grant. We need to have a vision of exactly what we want, and then if grants are announced that we're in a position to benefit from, we've got these shovel-ready projects that we can use to take advantage of such funding. I can't see any other members looking to come in, so I'll move to the recommendations then, which to summarise are that we adopt the Usk and Woodside Improvement Master Plan, that the process to deliver the action plan is set out in the next steps section, that a steering committee is established, which will then go on to agree terms of reference, that the Chief Officer for Enterprise and relevant cabinet members be kept regularly updated on the actions of the steering group and the refinement of the action plan, and that additional amendment, that additional recommendation as well that Sarah referred to facilitate early occupation for the vacant household waste recycling site in Maryport Street in Usk. And you know, we really welcome the engagement we've had with Usk Town Council, but Llanbaddock Community Council as well. So those are the 5 recommendations. Can I ask colleagues to vote on those now, please? That's unanimous in favour of that report. Thank you very much. So we'll move to the next item then, which is item 4. It's our 21st Century Schools programme and the outcome of the statutory objection period. This is on our plans to establish a new all-through school in Abergavenny, and presenting this report for us is Councillor Paul Pavia.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Just in terms of the context of the paper, Cabinet colleagues will remember that on the 14th of April last year, Cabinet approved the decision to enter into the required statutory consultation process, proposing to establish an all-through school on the King Henry VIII school site in Abergavenny. That process took place over the spring of last year and was extended slightly due to COVID impact. Consultation report was then produced and then was published to all statutory consultees, analysing the feedback received during the consultation period and also highlighting the authority's response to that feedback. There was then detailed scrutiny of those proposals, which took place both at CYP Select and local members had the opportunity as well, both in CYP and in full council, to look at that in the early autumn, which was absolutely right and proper to do that. On the 6th of October then, the consultation report was presented to members of the Cabinet, and a recommendation arising from that consultation stage of that process was then to propose the all-through school, which should become a 3 to 19 with a maintained nursery setting, as opposed to the 4 to 19 school with a non-maintained nursery. And we listened to the consultation responses and to local members, and we acted on that. So the recommendation then was to accept the Cabinet report, and then to take us forward to the next stage of the statutory process, which was namely the publication of statutory notices, which is essentially informing the community and the wider public that we will cease to maintain, or look to cease to maintain, the two schools, King Henry School and Derry View, but also give them the opportunity to object to that proposal. So the council opened the statutory objection period through the publication of the statutory notices, which is found in the Appendix 2 of this report. The statutory notices were published on the council's website, and copies were placed at the multiple entrances and multiple entrance points to both Derry View Primary School and to King Henry VIII Comprehensive Schools. And all consultees were directly informed of their publication. And with the publication of those statutory notices, that opened the statutory objection period, which was formally opened on the 19th of October 2021 and concluded on the 17th of November 2021, which allows for a 28-day objection period as per the requirements of the School Organisation Code Wales 2018. In line then with the requirements of the 2018 code, the council has produced an objection report that seeks to highlight any formal objections received during the objection period and the council's response to those objections. And the full objection report is again included in Appendix 2 in further detail for Cabinet members' consideration. And during the 28-day period, we had one statutory objection received, and the opposing the development of the 3 to 19 school on the King Henry VIII site. As I said, the full details can be found in Appendix 2. But essentially, the objection received wasn't around the governance proposals, but rather centres around the size of the proposed new school, with a particular concern that the school is going to be too large, given the uncertainties around the council's aspirations outlined within the new local development plan. The council's response to this objection provides clarity that the size of the proposed new school is modelled against the committed housing developments and is not reliant upon the requirements of the proposed new LDP. So as Cabinet member, I'm satisfied the process has been properly executed and that the objection does not materially prevent us from moving to the next stage of the project plan. So just to highlight the report's recommendations before taking any questions, those recommendations are to establish an all-through school with specialist centre for pupils with complex neurodevelopmental needs between the ages of 3 to 19 on the site of the King Henry VIII Comprehensive School, Abergavenny, with effect from the 1st of September 2023. To cease to maintain both Derry View School and the King Henry VIII Comprehensive School with effect of the 31st of August 2023. And then to enable officers to take the necessary steps to establish a temporary governing body in advance of September 2023. Thanks, Leader.
Brill, thank you very much. Right, I'll come to Tudor Thomas in a couple of moments before, first of all, I'll invite any Cabinet colleagues who want to come in, but just before that, Will McLean and Kath Saunders, I don't know if either of you want to add anything to what Paul has said.
Can I just add, sorry, Chair, Leader, can I just add that to avoid any confusion with the ongoing project, the schools will be established a year before they move into their new accommodation. Just so that is clear, because sometimes there is confusion over the 23 and 24 dates that we use. But apart from that, Councillor Pavey has covered everything there is for the statutory notices. Thank you.
Fab, thank you. Are there any Cabinet colleagues who'd like to come in before I bring Councillor Tudor Thomas in? I can't see any hands. Right, Tudor, do you want to come in? I know you've taken great interest in this project. Do you want to ask a question, please?
Yeah, thanks, and thanks, Councillor Pavia, for that comprehensive report. There's a question or a comment that perhaps Councillor Pavia might want to comment on, but overall, I think there is an undercurrent still of some people not wanting, the establishment of the school, and obviously they didn't respond. So, obviously that has little effect. But I think the majority of people, and King Henry is not in my ward, but the majority of school age, secondary age children will go to the new development on the current King Henry site. But there are ongoing concerns, particularly now that plans have been published, and people have been looking at the plans. And I think people have some concerns in terms of issues like safeguarding issues, 3 to 19. Also, in terms of the plans going up just before Christmas, that people, feel like they didn't have time to respond to those, and that might not come under the remit of this decision today. And thirdly, issues still, I think, underlying about the transfer of pupils from Derry View School onto the new development. And I think parents of children in that school still have concerns, particularly about youngsters from the age of 3 or 4 being on the same site with youngsters up to 19. And I think that's quite a valid concern, and certainly I would say I think the majority of people are in favour, and certainly that came out in terms of CYP and how I summed up in the CYP when we looked at the school. But I think there's a great deal of work to be done in terms of communication, in terms of how the school will be developed, etc., and in a sense reassurance to both pupils and parents about the new school, because here it's a sort of strategic decision, but in reality it will boil down to youngsters having to change school and to being in quite a different sort of context. So I do think on the part of CYP generally in the authority, there needs to be a great deal of reassurance, and I think some people think this development is being rushed. Personally, I don't agree with that. I think we must move on it, but I think there must be very good two-way communication during the process, before the build actually starts, when it goes to full formal planning. And obviously a number of groups have responded to that. You've got the civic society, etc., and other groups who've made representation. But I say those are the concerns that are sort of coming to the top. And obviously, as a local member, one does actually get that, as elected members here will know. We are the sounding boards, and it's obviously my job and role to do that. I think overall there's a great deal of positivity, but I do pick up quite a bit of negativity as well, in the sense that people are concerned about the design, how the site will work, traffic issues, etc., and that might well be for another debate. But I do honestly feel that these concerns have to be taken on board, and I'm sure they will be as we go through the full formal planning process, and before any bricks get laid and the actual work starts. So I hope that makes some sense.
Well, thank you. Paul, do you want to come back on those points, please?
Yeah, and can I obviously thank Councillor Thomas for asking those questions, and obviously for the scrutiny work that he did in the last stage of the CYP select. I think it's really important that we take the community with us. I'm considering that the size of the project, is a significant investment for this authority. We're looking at circa £60 million, and I would like to think, we would take the vast majority of people within the Abergavenny area with this. I think you're absolutely right. There's obviously further communication work to be done, and I hope we can rely on working with local members to get those messages out to parents and the wider community. I think he's right in terms of what he's saying about the design process. Those are the next steps in this project journey. We're just focusing on the governance issues at the moment. In terms of the safeguarding, I can certainly give the assurance that all children attending the new school will be safeguarded. That the school will manage the interaction of all learners on site appropriately, so the children are safeguarded at all times, and the building will be designed so that there are no opportunities for pupils of different age groups to interact without appropriate supervision. And I think chairs of governors and senior leaders within the school who've accompanied us on our various fact-finding trips to a number of all through schools, but particularly the last school in Tonnerevel, will have seen how that interaction is managed and is managed well. And I think any fears that they have were assuaged, but it's obviously speaking to the parents as well and getting that message across. I'd also say that we shouldn't see the engagement of pupils outside their learning or chronological age as always a negative. There are many examples where behaviour of older students is moderated with younger pupils being on the same site. That role modelling then is spotlighted, and I think we should encourage students to raise to that role. I also see opportunities for improved pastoral engagement through different stages of the school. So, for example, where older pupils in the middle school could be peer buddies for what is currently the foundation phase pupils, and similarly then at the top end of the school. And obviously it'd be for the governing body and the leadership team to instill that ethos and those behaviours, but I think it would potentially help and improve pupil well-being and self-worth. In terms of Derry View School and the moving and supporting the pupils there, the 21st Century Schools project team will continue to work with the leadership teams of both schools throughout the project to ensure that that the comprehensive learning and curriculum plans are developed to ensure that students transition properly to the new school and transition with confidence. The plans based on on existing practice in both schools will ensure that developing resilient, ambitious and capable learners, which is the core of the new curriculum for Wales, will remain the focus throughout those transitional arrangements. And again, you're absolutely right. Getting that communication right with all stakeholders within the schools will be critical. In terms of the design issues that you raised and concerns about potentially the short consultation period, the recent consultation exercise was undertaken in line with the planning regulations, and appropriate timescales for feedback were provided. Prior to the online consultation, there were 3 face-to-face exhibitions were held for staff, pupils, governors and stakeholders and the wider community. There was 2 sessions at King Henry and 1 at Derry View. I managed to get to the Derry View one, as did some of your colleagues. I know 2 councillors Harris were in attendance in that session. The exhibitions were advertised through sending out over 600 invitations, in addition to those that were sent out to parents, governors and staff. And there was advertisements placed in the Abergavenny Chronicle, posters placed around areas around both schools. So it was well advertised. I know there will always be elements of the community they said they weren't properly consulted on. I understand that. But this period of consultation was for matters relating to planning only at this stage. So the project team are continuing to work and consult with stakeholders in relation to the ongoing design and development of the new school, and there will be opportunities for the community to feed into that process. So this paper is just in relation to the governance. It's really important that we statutorily comply with the code, and that we look to cease to maintain within good order, and obviously most importantly that we establish that shadow governing body which will start to take forward the key aspects of planning for the school as well. So I hope that covers all Councillor Thomas's points.
Brill, thanks Paul, that's really helpful, thank you. I can't see any other hands raised, so let's go then to the recommendations. I have to say this is a really exciting development for children and young people, not just in Abergavenny but in all the surrounding villages as well, and we're really excited about how this is going to develop to the next stage. So the recommendations then are to review the full content of the report, including the statutory objection report, which is in Appendix 1, and to agree to proceed to implement the following school reorganisation proposals. So they are to establish an all-through school with a specialist centre for pupils with complex neurodevelopmental needs between the ages of 3 to 19 on the site of King Henry VIII Comprehensive School in Abergavenny, with effect from the 1st of September 2023, to cease to maintain both Derryview Primary School and King Henry VIII Comprehensive School with effect from the 31st of August 2023, and to enable officers to take the necessary steps to establish a temporary governing body in advance of September 2023. So can I ask colleagues to vote now, please, on those recommendations? That's unanimous. Thank you all very much. So we'll move then to the next report, which is an update on the UK Community Renewal Fund, the Rural Development Programme, and also an update on future funding opportunities. And presenting this report for us is Councillor Lisa Dimmock.
Thank you, Leader. So this is an update and to raise awareness following the approval of Council's 2.04 million bid to the UK Community Renewal Fund and the Council's Rural Development Programme to seek approval to proceed with the additional funded rural economic development programmes. As a result of the UK's decision to leave the EU, structural funds will end in 2023. The UK government has committed to at least match fund EU receipts through the EU Shared Prosperity Fund. The CRF launched April 2021 is providing 220 million for 21-22. This will support local areas and prepare for the Shared Prosperity Fund launch in this year. Its purpose is to support people in their communities most in need and to pilot programmes and new imaginative approaches that will invest in skills, community in place, local businesses and supporting people into employment. The council submitted a bid of 2.04 million worth of projects that we were informed in November that all projects submitted had been approved and need to be completed by June 22. You can see the projects in Table 1, but just to name a few, the iConnect project and MHA, a place-based pilot to bring affordable, fast and accessible digital infrastructure to tenants who have no digital footprint or in digital poverty. The Carbon-Free Future with RSL Partners. This is a cooperation to investigate retrofitting housing stock to improve EPC rating, ensuring apprenticeships are in place to cover current and future requirements. And Caldicott Community Partnership with Gavo is revenue funded for the Fantastic Together Works Wellbeing Workshop and Community Hub in Caldicott that helps people access tools and equipment for carpentry, product design, plastic recycling, engineering and arts, and it will support spaces for community activities and training and community kitchen. To enable us to manage the delivery of the CRS, we have received 45,000 and this will help pay for the officers within the rural development team. So MCC were awarded 2.79 million in 2014 of the Rural Development EU funding to aid the Vale of Esk Leader programme, which is a community-led programme that aims to improve the quality of life in rural areas through exceptional local projects. The council is the administrative body for this project and we receive funding to employ 7 officers to manage the delivery of projects. All projects are assessed against the local development strategy overseen by local action groups made of volunteers representing the public, private, third and community sector. Over the last 5 years, leader projects have seen such as digital innovation, renewable energy, community development, rural transport, support for farming communities and rural tourism and sustainable food productions and environmental projects. In September this year, the RDP funding will stop, so the team working to identify alternative funding sources. The team are working to identify alternative funding sources so we can still deliver these projects. It is not yet known if the Shared Prosperity Fund will support the rural economic projects, whether this will continue to be separated into objective-led projects. The amount of funding or the delivery mechanism is known at this stage. The team is submitting applications or several projects to provide additional funding to maintain the RDP delivery team. These are now being assessed. Table 2 in the report are details of what has been submitted. None will incur in revenue costs to the council, but will require recruitment of staff to assist with the delivery. An options appraisal is outlined in the report of Table 3. But just to provide a quick hot off the press update, local food co-op project with the Cardiff Capital Region deal challenge funding has been approved. So that's great news. And can I just thank Kath Fallon, the author of the report? And I'll hand back to you, Leader, to read out the recommendations.
Thank you very much. That's a really positive update. Thank you. Before inviting Cabinet members to come in, the raise hand function is there. I don't know if Kath Fallon, as the author of the report, there's anything you wish to add, please?
Thank you, Leader, and thank you ever so much for Councillor Dimmitt for a delivery of the report. I guess my thank yous go to the team who've worked so hard with the applicants to bring forward the Community Renewal Fund applications. And in fairness, the quality was just excellent, and also to our local action group who assessed them as well. So thank you to that, and actually for their continuing efforts to find future funding. So it was just a big thank you from myself. Thank you.
Brill, thank you. And we were really delighted that we were successful in so many of those bids as well, and a good opportunity for local authorities like ourselves to work directly with UK government. I can't see any hands raised, so I'll go straight to the recommendations then, which are that we consider the benefits that the approval of the UK Community Renewal Fund will bring to Monmouthshire, alongside the potential impact of the loss of the Rural Development Programme. And secondly, that we approve the delivery of the additional rural economic development programmes in line with confirmation of funding being received. Can I ask colleagues to vote on those recommendations now, please? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll move then to our penultimate report, which is the Welsh and Education Strategic Plan, and presenting that for us is Councillor Paul Pavier. Welcome back, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Yeah, the purpose of this report then is to provide Cabinet members with Monmouthshire's first 10-year Welsh and Education Strategic Plan, which will run from 2022 to 2031. As portfolio lead, I'm seeking your approval to submit the plan to Welsh ministers in line with statutory requirements. Colleagues should review the actions, the targets and the timescales proposed in the WESP in relation to all aspects of the local authority's corporate and strategic work. And this is particularly relevant in the proposed expansion of Welsh medium education in both primary and secondary phases, school transport arrangements, provision for Welsh medium learners with additional learning needs, and the Welsh language capacity of the workforce. Just in terms of the context, you will see that the national policy context there and the Welsh Government's ambition, its aspiration for 1 million Welsh language speakers by 2050. Obviously, to make that happen, it means that all local authority partners need to play their part in helping Welsh Government fulfil that commitment. And there's several elements of how we do that. So it's more children in Welsh medium education, better planning in relation to how people learn the language, more easy to access opportunities for people to use the language, a stronger infrastructure and a revolution to improve digital provision in Welsh, and a cultural sea change in the way we speak about learning and using the language. So the role of education is obviously a critical component in achieving that 1 million target, and hence we've framed our ambitions within the plan around 7 principal outcomes, as you will see there in 3.3. Outcome 7 is multifaceted in that while there's of course an expectation that we will develop our teaching cohort and give them opportunities to develop their skills so they can be more confident and proficient in delivering the curriculum through the medium of Welsh. There's obviously a national dimension to this as well in relation to workforce planning that lies squarely with Welsh Government and other agencies. So, you know, we are reliant there on national government and other national and regional agencies to support it in that piece of work. In terms of the consultation on the plan, the local authority concluded that statutory 8-week consultation period in December last year, and this included providing copies of a draft report to all statutory consultees and meeting virtually with members of the Welsh Education Forum, CYP Select and head teachers. And just at this point, I'd like to pay tribute to the Welsh Education Forum for their intensive scrutiny and challenge. They do push us in terms of a local authority, you know, not just with this piece of work, but in terms of all our policy and delivery. And it's right that they should challenge us, but they're also incredibly supportive when we do take the right action. And obviously, Councillor Thomas is here. I'm sure he's going to ask some questions on this when we conclude. But he's a very active member of that Welsh Education Forum. So I'm obviously pay tribute to his work as well on that forum. So all the comments and feedback from the consultation period have been considered fully and where appropriate have been reflected in the final plan report, which is presented to Cabinet colleagues today. The local authority is required to submit a version of our first 10-year WESP to Welsh ministers for approval no later than the 31st of January of this year. Welsh ministers will then consider the WESP between January and May 2022 and will include further discussions with the local authority as required with approval before August 2022, ready for implementation from next academic year in September. There will be resource implications that we will need to consider in developing a new school in the Monmouth area and in entering a partnership with other local authorities regarding a new Welsh secondary school and how we transport our children to those settings as well. The primary school piece in the north in Monmouthshire is that finance envelope is starting to emerge, and that focus will be in place very shortly. But the secondary school piece and the transport piece will emerge when further assessment work and analysis is done. So I won't go through the recommendations at this stage, Leader. I'll leave you to do that. So happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you very much. And I have to say this is a major development for Welsh medium education in Monmouthshire, isn't it? With, you know, particularly with the development of a new seedling primary school, co-development of a new secondary provision. I think it really demonstrates our commitment as a local authority to ensuring that parents have a meaningful choice between English and Welsh medium for their children. The raise hand function is there if any cabinet members want to contribute. But first, Will McLean, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
No, thank you, Leader. I think Councillor Pavey has covered all of the salient issues really clearly there.
Fab, thank you very much. I can't see any hands up from cabinet members, so Tudor Thomas, do you want to come in?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Diolch yn fawr Cadeirydd, a diolch yn fawr Cynghorydd Paul Pavier mynd trwy'r cynllun. We need to have some Welsh in actually operating, I think, you know, at times. But yeah, I thank you for that. And yes, I think, you know, the WESP sets out the plan, and it is a long-term strategy, isn't it? It's 10 years, you know, so it's a hugely significant document, and obviously it's very important if we're to attain this target across Wales of 1 million Welsh speakers, then obviously Monmouthshire plays its part. I mean, two things that I would say is, I must admit, I said this in WESP, and it's more of a comment than a question, but I'm a bit disappointed that the seedling school has taken so long to get established. I know there've been issues about sites in Monmouth, etc., but in reality, if you're a parent who wants your children to go into Welsh medium, then you've got to be a bit of a zealot, really, haven't you, in terms of transport. And I know, again, you know, we're in a rural authority, and that is an issue. But at the moment, with just one school in the north, one in the south, the one in the north incredibly popular, and the one in the south now picking back up again. But it does mean that youngsters are travelling quite a long way, and lots of parents who've got young children, obviously I haven't now, but I had in the past, you are talking about quite a lot of transport, and that does put people off. You know, in Abergavenny, the school is popular, it's a good school, but also it's the fact that lots of kids can actually walk to school with their parents or with friends, or they can be transported from not too far away. And I am really looking forward to the establishment of the seedling school in Monmouth, because that will pertain in that town as well. So I really think we need to move on that. The other thing I would say, and again, it's more of a comment rather than a question, but you know, in reality, if you're a secondary age student in Monmouthshire, either you have to go to Ysgol Gyfun East Coed in Newport, which is quite a tortuous journey. And for people, if you want to send your children in that area to the Roman Catholic school in Newport, that's tortuous. Same with Gwynllew, 12-mile journey, and two of my children did that journey, you know, for 7 years. So I really do want to sort of press and ask for a bit of a timescale of Councillor Pavia about the establishment of secondary Welsh medium provision, because that really does put children off, and stopping at 11, children then tend to regress in terms of their language. So it's, you know, you need total immersion up to 18 for the parents who want it. And obviously I'm not imposing on anybody else, but I honestly think that is a huge priority. And if you look at Crickhowell Powys area, there is no Welsh medium provision until you get to Brecon, which is bilingual school. So I commend the report, but I do think we need to keep on pressing in terms of Welsh medium, because I think we could do a lot more. But thanks for all your efforts. Thank you.
Thanks, Tudor. Paul, do you want to come back on that, please?
Yeah, thanks, Leah. Can I thank Councillor Thomas for his questions? You know, I know he's referenced the importance of getting the seedling in Monmouth a number of times in the Welsh Education Forum, and he's right. You know, we can't we can't not delay, because it's not an easy issue to resolve, as he's highlighted. You know, the development restrictions and the environmental challenges within Monmouth are difficult in terms of finding development space and floodplains. So you know, it hasn't been for the want of trying, but you know, he's emphasised here and in the Welsh Education Forum, you know, the opportunity cost of losing those pupils to the Welsh education, and to potentially losing their parents as well, because you know, if they're not first language Welsh, there's the opportunity for those parents to immerse themselves in the language as well. So you know, we're losing out twice, and so you know, we have got to get on with this, and we are moving on this. We do believe we've got a solution to that seedling provision, and we're working very closely with the particular school's governing body, and you know, those discussions certainly are progressing at pace, which will allow us to start that provision in September 2023. So that will mean that that offer needs to be on stream by the end of this year, this calendar year, for those choices to be made. So we recognise it is later than obviously Councillor Thomas and others have hoped for, but we will enable children who could have started in 2022 to transfer into year one as well into 2023. So we want to capture those pupils. We don't want to lose them at all. In terms of secondary school provision, we are in early discussions with a number of local authorities, Blaenau Gwent, Powys and Merthyr as well. Merthyr's come into the mix quite late about this for a potential a new Welsh medium secondary school site in the heads of the valleys. The number of Welsh learners transferring from our Welsh medium primary schools at the end of Key Stage 2, it isn't sufficient for us to create a Welsh medium secondary within county. And there'd also be challenges for location and staffing, and obviously breadth of provision as well would be considerable. So at this stage, we believe a collaborative approach is the best route. But if our aspirations within the West do materialise, then potentially the back end of this plan and the back end of this decade, we could and hopefully should be looking at potentially Welsh medium, our own Welsh medium secondary provision within county. That if we're ambitious enough to grow that cohort of Welsh language learners, then we would hope that we could have that county offer. Well, I'll bring in the Chief Officer here because he may be able to add a little bit more in terms of operational detail to those discussions that are taking place with those other authorities. Will, do you want to come in?
Thank you. Will, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, thanks. So thanks, Councillor Pavia. The directors have met and commissioned the Regional Planning for School Places group to look at the levels of need in the area for future Welsh secondary demand. Obviously, we know the aspirations in Blaenau Gwent. They're looking to develop a second primary school. Obviously, in the north of the county, in Monmouthshire, we will eventually have hopefully the equivalent of 3 forms of entry at the end of the West period of time is our aspiration. That would begin to give you a number of children transferring from Key Stage 2 to 3, which would be a manageable amount. The point that Councillor Thomas raised about the south of Powys is also an interesting dimension for us. So in the south of Powys, there's no Welsh medium primary provision until you get to Brecon, and then there's a Welsh stream at Brecon High. So Powys were very interested in the discussion of the around what that might look like, and I think the process in thinking about the location is obviously aided by the new Heads of the Valley Road. That means that transfer up to the top of the Heads of the Valleys is significantly easier. So we'll have to work all of those things through, but it will be a really interesting piece of work to take forward, and it will clearly be something, and I think we've tried to emphasise this in the report, that members will have to consider for Band C. We can't say that it's going to be in Band C already, because that's going to have to be a consideration when we see the Welsh Government's aspirations for what the next band of 21st century schools looks like, and what the local considerations are. We know that there's work in the south of the county to undertake clearly, and it'll be about balancing out those resources. So there's a nod there to decisions to come in the future as well.
Okay, fab, thank you. Was there anything you wanted to say to sum up, Paul?
No, I don't think so, Leader. I think that the recommendations are pretty clear. I'm hopeful that we realise this West, it is ambitious, and we obviously have been pushed by key stakeholders within the county and within the region to make sure it is ambitious, but it is achievable as well. As well as alluded to, there will be further financial implications of elements within the plan that we'll have to consider in due course. But I think it is an ambitious plan, and as you said at the sort of the start of the report, it's a really exciting piece of work for the county. I'm sure we've sort of been challenged in terms of our benchmark, and we do, compared to some other local authorities, but we're starting probably from a lower base in terms of our offer and our numbers. But we want to accelerate through this next decade, and I think this plan will take us there.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. So the recommendations then are that we receive the Monmouthshire Welsh and Education Strategic Plan, that we agree the actions, targets and timescales contained within it, including the expansion of Welsh Medium Primary in the northeast of the county and the co-creation of a new secondary school, a school transport review to ensure all learners within the county have a realistic option of choosing Welsh Medium education, the development of additional learning needs Welsh Medium provision, and an increase in the proportion of Welsh speakers in school and local authority workforces. Can I ask colleagues to vote on those recommendations now, please? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. So let's move on to the final report today then, which is the Welsh Church Fund, and presenting that is Councillor Phil Murphy.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. And we've got a handful today. First one was the Church of St James the Great in Devorden, looking for 7,500. They've got roof problems. It's not draining away, and the external walls creating problems with damp. That was looked at, and the recommendation was £2,000 awarded to assist with that. Tintern Angling Club, they are looking to do work to repair the west bank of the fishing pond, and £650 was awarded to assist with the material costs of that. The Parochial Church Council of St Mary's Priory Church in Monmouth, they're looking to raise 25,000 for the renovation of the ground floor, to include a new kitchen, toilet, storage room, etc. The recommendation is £2,000 towards that. And St Arvan's Village Trust in Tintern, looking to raise £1,500 for the renovation of the village community meetings rooms. They've fallen into disrepair and require updating our health and safety concerns there. The recommendation is £750 towards that project. And that's it, Leader.
Thank you very much. I can't see any hands raised, so let's move on to the vote on the recommendation then, which is that those 4 grants be awarded. Can I ask everyone to vote on that recommendation, please? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. So that brings us to the end of today's agenda. As we've had a rather epic meeting today, we don't have a meeting in February, so our next meeting will be 3 o'clock on Wednesday, the 2nd of March. Can I thank councillors, officers for your contributions today? Can I thank the public for their interest in watching our discussions this afternoon? And I look forward to seeing you all at our next meeting. Thank you all very much. Have a good afternoon.
Cheers, Leader.